Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Hello, how are you? How you doing? Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to the Erudition Network. My name is Eddie K. Phillips. I am the host of this show, which is the Erudition Network, Black History Interactive and Knowledge Session. We're back at our original time at 5. One of the reasons why I did it tonight is because I know that there are debates getting ready to come on tonight, and I know some of you all are politically attuned, and you want to spend time looking at the two men who are running for president tonight. By all means, do that. But I want to be able to get on here and do a session. It's a little bit early, and to see, uh, if I could catch some of you all around this time during the live session. Uh, we are coming to you live like we do every Thursday. Um, and happy to see some of you. I see Sean Anthony. I see you're in here. Good to see you, Sean Anthony. Thank you for being here. My son, you are a viewer who is always here. I appreciate you because even though I'm your father, at least you care enough to watch every time. I'm in a good mood today. Which, considering a lot of things that are going on, is a good thing. But I definitely am in a better mood than I have been for quite some time. I have been. Let me tell you all something. My wife does her show on Mondays for mental health. Mental health is a real thing, and it's something that we're facing in America a lot. Um, I'm very open. Some people will tell you probably maybe too open with how I feel sometimes mentally, because you know sometimes you feel down and you may not know why, and sometimes you deal with things in your day-to-day life that have an effect on you, and we kind of push those things down, um, and hold them down and try to hopefully that they will go away. But sometimes we need to face some of those things, and dealing with it, we all deal with things in different ways. And so I have been dealing with a couple of things, and they were really bothering me. But I trust God, and I do believe as a Christian that God will make a way. I'm gonna clean my glasses here, but I do believe that God will make a way on certain things. So I have given it to him, and I've pretty much allowed myself and said, you know what, I'm not going to sit here and dwell on those things that stress you out or bring you or an attempt to bring you down, and I'm just going to keep pushing forward. And so that's what I'm doing tonight. Feeling good about it. um I was given some time for some people to come in. I get a lot of questions. Let me tell you all something. I get a lot of questions every week, and it blows my mind because I get these questions, and then due to whatever reason, there are very few people who are in the interactive. So I wind up addressing the questions with the hope that the people who ask the questions are going to get the answers that are getting the answers that to the questions that they pose to me, because I'm getting out of answering questions online immediately. Um, some things take a deeper dive, and then sometimes, I want to encourage you to come on and ask those questions during these live interactive sessions where I'm on for an hour to do nothing more than to talk to you about history and knowledge and to go into these topics. So I want you to ask your questions. I want you to put those questions out there and come on and have a discussion with us openly, honestly, daily. You know, um, just putting out a reminder. But a lot of times, people, I get it. You get to a point where you don't want to ask in a public way. I get that. But some questions that you all send me are good questions that should be asked to the public, right? That should be out here because what they do um, is they inspire other people to ask questions. Um, so please, 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 feel free that you can come on and do that, and work with us, and we'll get that done. All right, I just wanted to put out something here to let folks know that we're on and alive and active and here to ask these questions and to go into these topics and whatever which way we're led to do tonight. Pastor Ray, it's good to see you. Thank you for that sending for that message that you put on Facebook earlier today, and to the individual who wanted to find the links to the books. I really, really appreciate that. If you all don't know, I wrote a book. It's been out a little bit. It's still an interactive book for right now. We're trying to get a print book for it out here, but the interactive book allows you to do just that. Just like we have an interactive program, this book allows you to interact with the book, ask questions, or see the questions and answer the questions, ask questions, answer the questions, and it'll tell you if you're wrong, and it'll give you chances and hints, and then it'll take you and give you a very, very, I hope to be, profound answer on correct answer that you can take with you. It gives you references and sources and places that you can go to further expound your knowledge on each question. Each question has an average. I think the average of 5 sources per question. I tried to make sure that it was somewhat like that. Some are a little fewer than that, maybe 3, but I'm sure there's not one that has just one source that will allow you to grow your knowledge. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a couple of minutes. I've been on here for about 8 or 9 minutes. Listen, someone asked a very interesting question. Oh, thank you. I was hoping that interactive way of doing it would just allow people to be able to take it everywhere. And so I appreciate that, that you see that for what it is. Someone asked me this. It was Phyllis from sent me a question about Rod Serling. Now, if you don't know Rod Serling was the guy that you all saw at the beginning of the Twilight Zone, right? And he was the guy that they would whip the camera to. He was the guy in the suit that was sitting there talking about what was going on in the episode, and he would tell you what was happening. However, there were issues, right, that Rod Serling wound up facing, and because of that, this is what the Twilight Zone was pretty much born from. He had a huge Rod Serling started in radio, right? And he had a good following. But in order to have a good following, you had to have sponsors too. And that was usually they had cigarette companies at the time and cereal things and everything like that. Well, Rod Serling, inspired by the tragic murder of Emmett Till, right? He wanted to do something because when he mentioned Emmett Till on his show, on an earlier show that he did, his advertisers pulled away. They wanted to pull away. And so there was a concern that he had, and he had to find a way to get around stories and tell stories. If you go watch certain episodes of the Twilight Zone, you will know that Serling spent a lot of time dealing with themes of racism, militarism. He tried to talk about what was going on in society in a very creative way. And so when people are now finding out that the murder of Emmett Till helped to inspire him to write stories and do things that you saw in the Twilight Zone, it shouldn't be a shock. He was one of those people. He was behind helping in the writing and in the producing of Planet of the Apes, which is another way of showing how world domination and things happen. He was very, very attuned to racism and the understanding that racism was a detriment to America. And so he wanted to do shows and episodes that talked about that. There was an episode that he did, I forget the name of it, but it was basically about a town that was in a drought, that was having issues, and people were poor, and there were racial tensions. And the sheriff allowed a young Mexican boy to be killed, to be lynched. And this again shows you his direct understanding of how do we tell these stories in a way that we can be creative while at the same time not pushing away censors. You be smarter than the system that you're dealing with. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing. I tell you to go do further reading. I'm giving you just the bare bones of it. But go out there and look up these writers. You'd be surprised how many. What's going on, Tony? Good to see you. How many of these folks like Rod Serling, who were inspired by Black life and Black things that were going on in the community, people who marched with Dr. King and people who gave money to the civil rights movement. There are many of them, and some would surprise you. We spend so much time talking about the racism of Hollywood, and there is that. But there were many who wanted to see equality, and they had friends who were Black and didn't like the way that they were being treated by the business. And so, and they were inspired by stories and things that were going on. So it's a definite something that you want to go further into and look into. And I do appreciate Phyllis for sending me that question, asking if this is true. Yes, it is absolutely true. Rod Serling was inspired by Emmett Till, the murder of Emmett Till, and also the idea of society being okay with it, knowing that these men lied about the how they killed this young man, and then later were paid by a magazine, which was sponsored by some of the same sponsors that tried to quiet Serling's talking about it. Paid these men for an interview to describe exactly how they tortured and killed Emmett Till after they were found innocent and they knew that they could not be retried for the crime. So it is something for us to definitely look into and to get further into our history on. Ladies and gentlemen, the other thing that I guess I want to talk about here today, I'm sorry. Hey, as we always do on this, if you're new to the program, if you've never been on this program before, I open up the floor in the beginning for your questions. And I apologize because I went right into a subject and I did not do that. If you are on here live tonight and you have some question about it could be Black history, it could be anything that we can discuss. And if I have an understanding of it, I guarantee you we will further our understanding together. Please feel free to ask that question now. Put your questions in there if you have any. If you don't have any, that's fine too. And we'll talk about it. While you all are formulating those questions, let me tell you something. We had a great episode on Monday. Hey, good to see you, Phil. Thank you for joining us, man. On Monday on Tina's show, talking about the church, predominantly the Black church, as a business, or is it a business or a place or a place of worship and of spiritual enlightenment? Is it both? And I tell you, we weren't planning to, but we went about 2 hours. If you want something that is that was such a great conversation, I believe that if you watch that, if you go back and pull that up on YouTube, on our channel or on Facebook, and you watch that, you are going to get something from that. It was definitely something to talk about and something that we needed to address, because we're finding that we're becoming more of a business-based church affiliated situation. And the other issue that I brought up, we're having what is called the Hegelian dialectic synthesis. Yes, let's say that again. Hegelian dialectic synthesis. Basically, to put that in basic terms, what that means is the word of God is the word of God. Faith, Christianity is faith in what it is. But there was a philosopher, and that's where this Hegelian dialectic comes from, where we feel that there is a positive and a negative in what we're saying. In other words, if I tell you that the Bible thus saith the word, and you tell me, well, I feel this way, we want to be able to synthesize it to make something different. We're following that philosophy too much in these churches. We're following it too much and making it into the business. So when you go watch that episode, I'm not going to give you everything that we talked about. Go in there and sit down and watch that. I guarantee you, you're going to get something from that and grow from that. I don't know what was going on. The devil did not want me to get that out of my mouth, but it was something, and I really, really enjoyed it. Come on, y'all. Nobody got any question? Any question? I'm sure y'all got some Black history question, some knowledge question. Hey, man, it could be something. Science, math, no politics. Don't want to talk about politics tonight, because you're going to have these people on here later on tonight. They're going to be ticking everybody off for politics, but something that you may have read in the book, right? Me and Tina both have a book out. She has a book called Generational Wealth. I have a book out, that 101 questions on early world Black history. Even if you ask a question from one of those, maybe it was something that you read that you wanted to get a further understanding on, any of that, I'm open to it right now. Before we get into any other major focuses tonight, my phone. But I'm open to you. What do you have? What do you think? What's on your mind? Anything that it may be. Sure, somebody out of the 7 people we got on here tonight, somebody got a question. You got a question. I answered one. Phyllis, if you happen to come on, I answered your question earlier about Rod Serling. Thank you for that question. But I'm sure that there's some more out here. Eric, good to see you, my brother. I'm happy that you were able to join us tonight. Question, Eric. I'm sure you always have a question, Eric. You always have some kind of question. And I don't want a political question. I'm probably caveat that. A lot surfacing on Dr. King's essay and challenging the divinity of Christ. So, Tony, let me tell you, I kind of talked about this. Where are you? I kind of talked about this on that show we did Monday. If you have not gotten this book, it is easier to find now. My mother, thank you to my mom. A shout out to her friend Denise for getting this. Testament of Hope. I had this book many years ago, and I wound up leaving it on the ship. This is the essential writings and speeches of Dr. King. So it has a lot of his letters. It has a lot of his notes. It has a lot of things in this book that Dr. King talks about. But here's the thing. They're going off of an essay that was written when Dr. King was still in seminary. That's one. Secondly, there are people, as I said, who have written, they wrote books on Dr. King even before he died, right? to discredit him. And we have to be careful of these people, because what they did was they tried to focus our attention on things that they thought were communist, right? On Dr. King's philosophy. And it was an attempt to discredit him with the Black church. Dr. King talks in his writing several times about the resurrection of Christ, the divinity of Christ. So when I see people say, well, he didn't believe in that, I would challenge you to go pick up the Testament of Hope, go read 3 or 4 of his sermons in here, and find the truth. Find the truth as it is. Because when you do that, I guarantee you, you will not be saying, oh, well, he didn't believe in this and this and that. And now we have church preachers who are benefiting from the ability to be able to transmit their services around the world because of the efforts of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC. So I just think that, it's disingenuous and something that we definitely need to stop doing. Why was there a belief around the possibility that the skull of a Black person could make it so that so when you look, it's a great question, Sean Anthony, chronology, right? Which is a disproved science, right? There was a lot of effort put in pseudoscience to try to disqualify Blacks as being human. And that was done with a purpose, because what you had to do was to be able to justify what you were doing to Black people. That's really what it was, right? You were trying to make it so that you could say that they are closer to animal than human. And it was once considered a very, very viable scientific discipline. People went all over it, and they held seminars in some of the most highest schools around the world talking about chronology, right? But what we found was that it was always about racial chronology, right? Telling people that folks had a smaller head or a bigger head, or they had different shapes in the skull that showed that they were not as intelligent. Even into World War II, the Nazis were still pushing some of the ideas of chronology. But the whole purpose of it was to justify, and the Nazis were doing it to justify the differences between Aryans and Jews. In the same way that slave owners and racists in the Americas did it to justify the enslavement of Blacks or indigenous people. But when you look at the issues of chronology, right, you start to realize that those claims are foolish. They're foolish, because as we started to get more into other ways of studying the human body, we realized that the human skull is different in everybody. Its shape, its size. And it doesn't hinder the intellectual ability of the person. Great question. Great question. Yeah, it's just an issue, Tony, that a lot of people don't seem to really get. I'm just observing today. No questions from me. Yeah, no, yeah, whatever. I didn't understand LGBT, but I will have to go back and watch the whole. So I didn't really put out an LGBTQ post. What it was is I saw something that didn't sound right. And we actually, as a family, we watched half of it. I won't comment too much on it because I haven't finished watching the entire thing. But I just think that a lot of times it is an example of how we get into these dialectics. We get into these arguments, to make it more germane. We get into these arguments with each other, thinking that at the end of it, we're going to amalgamate into something new. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes we're just going to disagree. Now, that disagreement doesn't mean that I dislike you, I mistreat you, I hate you. That's a different imperialistic mentality that comes from a long history of that. But what I think is that we can have a differing of opinion and still live as people. Somehow, some way, we're allowing politics and religion and all of these things to put ourselves in sectors that no one interacts. We can't do that. What we can do is have a discussion and reach out. And if we feel we can't come to an agreement or an understanding that we can all have our own opinion, our own free will, then enough said. It doesn't mean that I have to accept what you're saying or you have to accept what I'm saying, or we have to amalgamate and combine what we're saying to form some syncretic mentality that we're now attaching each other and agreeing with each other and losing what we actually, believe or what or who we are. So it's a deeper thing and a deep conversation, but I may address that later. Hey, good to see you. Thank you, Tita, for being here. You should have been here anyway, but God bless you anyway. Now I'm happy that you're here. Ladies and gentlemen, so what you got here, Phil? We got to learn to agree to disagree and keep it moving. Keep it moving. I ain't got to agree with everything that you say, right? Or everything that you do, right? I may have a friend that smokes and drinks and parties. I don't. I like to stay home, rest, and sleep. But that doesn't make him or she not my friend, right? That just means that we have a different way of how we feel we should relax. Now, I might tell them, hey, I don't like the way you overdrink, man. That might be bad for you. And they could either accept it or not accept it. I said it, and I move on. Right? People don't have to receive everything that you say. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. I guess you don't, because I haven't seen any new ones. There were some good ones that you guys threw out there, and I do appreciate it. Let me ask this question to you all. We've talked before or on multiple occasions about Black people and what they brought to America, to the society. We specifically know what they bought as far as labor. We know what they bought as far as military interaction. There's not a war that we've had that Blacks have not fought in, and because of their interaction, allowed this country to reach heights that it probably would not have reached. We know the stories of all throughout, Salem Poor, Dory Miller. We can go on and on and on. All these different war heroes who we have had, who have helped us become a stronger nation. And I've told you all many times, about, and I've asked you to go out and get W.B. Du Bois, another person who they said you shouldn't read because Du Bois was an atheist and he was a communist. And this, I've been hearing so many things lately, ladies and gentlemen. But he wrote a great book, The Gift of Black Folk. And I think that that's a great book that you should read. And it covers a lot of the things that I just mentioned right there. But one of the things that I don't think we spend a lot of, I saw a post recently. I don't know who it was from. It was talking about music, right? And I laughed. I said, there really was no American, traditional American music, folk music, rhythmic music, without black people. Without Black people. We're just talking about amalgams, right? The combination of the African and the European, whereas the European bought different instruments over, and the African bought their sense of rhythmic intonement, the rhythmic cry, that cry. I don't think you can read through any history and not of America and not come down to something talking about the rhythmic cry of the African American slave. It is what has infused our music for centuries, because Black folks say with a cry. They beat their drum, they did, but there was always that um, utter desire to be heard, predominantly from God. And it affected slave owners. It affected them. Many wrote about it, of how they would sit there and listen to Black folks sing, and they heard Black folks sing different songs in a way that they never heard before, and put an atonement to it that was beautiful to them. Oh, so I did. I'm sorry, Tony. I'm sorry. Sorry. I missed your question. Why do you think Sinai churches and mosques are losing young people and Buddhism is in the rise in Africa due to the impact of Chinese presence? No, so here's what I believe. I believe that a lot of what we're seeing with religion around the world, and this comes from not just Eddie's opinion either, is that the less we teach and the more we acquiesce. A lot of the reasons that a lot of people go over to Buddhism is because of what it offers them. And what I should say is the freedom that they think it offers them. Right? And because they feel that it gives them a certain amount of freedom, a certain amount of way of doing things, while at the same time staying spiritual, right? Because that's the new word now. I'm staying spiritual. It allows them to be free in their way. Because remember, Buddhism does not require no divine authority, right? You don't have to have a divine being. You don't have to have that for Buddhism. And so that allows you to not have anyone that you have to necessarily answer to. And though it gives you all, it bends to the tenets that allow you to feel that you're doing the right thing, right? I believe in karma. I believe in wisdom and compassion. I don't want to be violent, but you lose the spiritual or the affection or the adherence to God. So there is definitely things in the work, Tony, for that, and that is why we start to see things dropping off. To me, it comes back down to teaching. We have so much false teaching in a lot of different areas of these religions, whether it be Islam, whether it be Christianity. We are teaching things that turn people away. I remember being overseas and a man telling me one time that Americans are hypocrites because they do not follow God. Not in a way that the Bible nor the Quran says that you should. And because of that, this is why we call them Satan. This is why we call them the great Satan. So when you have hypocrisy, lies, you see things all over the world. We got mega churches where people are emphasizing, and the mega churches realize that they're being sent all over the world, but they don't care. Some of these false preachers, teachers, and folks, and so that inspires people too to go, well, I'm going to step away from this. This does not seem right. And understand that African people have always been spiritual people. They've always had a desire and the knowledge to know that there is a God, and that you can live this right life. And now you're pushing them away from God in order to just align themselves with what's going on in today's world. it is a mess. I hope that answered your question. I hope that answered your question. Um, yeah, man. What was I talking about? Hey, man, I told you I'm in a good mood tonight. I'm not stressing anything. Um, I'm not even going to be talking about this whole debate. I probably won't be watching that. I don't know. Um, it's a mess out here, and I don't want to get into the political uh, uh, rigmarole of craziness that's going on. It's just so much stuff out here, so much lunacy. And so I don't know what I may do tonight. I may sit down, I may not. I do like to see what people are bringing to the table and to be informed. But at the same time, I'm seeing so much of the same thing. The same thing. Um, that brings up another idea here. And I know I'm everywhere tonight. Uh, Earl O'Farry Hutchison wrote a book. I don't know. I have it somewhere. Uh, it is a history of presidential failures. I suggest before you sit down to vote for anyone that you go and pick up that book and you do some reading on that book and you find out how things went wrong and things continue to go wrong. And rather you call yourself whatever your political party, how at the end of the day, we have not had, remember, we've had one black president and all of the presidents that we've had. And when you don't have skin in the game fully, you don't feel required to make certain decisions. You don't feel required because it doesn't necessarily affect you. And I believe that book, I think that's the title, History of Presidential Failures, by Earl O'Farry Hutchison. You can probably find it on Amazon. And do some reading on that and understand how all of this has affected us. He also has another book. I suggested to somebody the other day. It's an older book. I had my sons read it. It's called The Assassination of the Black Male Image. That's another great book that you should get. The Assassination of the Black Male Image is an older book. I don't think he's done any revision on it, but it will cover some things that you may have heard me cover on many occasions. I find that when I go through and I look at things, a lot of people are talking about, if you really, really want to source history factually, you will find that you agree more than you disagree. And he talks a lot about these men and these women who have manipulated us into these situations politically, socially, philosophically, spiritually, and how all of that is going on and why it happens and what's the history behind it, right? Even in sports, and how there's a very big connection. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it. There's a connection from slavery to the sports arena. And I am appreciative that our brothers and sisters now have started to understand that and have gotten smarter about that. When when you have people calling, "Oh, I'm the owner." What? Whereas back in the day, you look at some of these things, they were the team manager, right? The owner was not necessarily language used. And you can go back and you can double check me on this. The owner was not necessarily the language used until we started to integrate a lot of these sports. Right? And then you became the owner. And so there is connections here and things that need to be seen. And so go get those books that I just mentioned, and I think you will come away from it smarter, wiser. He's a great writer. I don't know. I haven't really checked on Mr. Hutchison to see if he's still around. A lot of people have passed over the last few years, But definitely someone you need to go look up and go read. Get some of those books, I suggest. Um, I was talking about something and I forgot. Do y'all remember? Do y'all remember? I forgot. I was going somewhere. I know I was going somewhere. But Tony's question, it kind of threw me off a little bit, but no, not in a bad way. I want you guys, this is interactive. I want you to have questions, and I want you to talk about some of these things. So definitely uh, don't stop your questions. But I just can't remember what else I was talking about. If anybody knows, just drop it in the chat, and we'll go with it from there. No, it wasn't bad. I'm always look. My thoughts are all over the place anyway, but it's always good. It was a good question. You said you can't remember anything. Your memory should not be so bad, sir, as young as you are. His memory being bad. Oh man, I don't know, man. Oh, there was another question I got. So a couple of weeks ago, I'll go into that question. A couple of weeks ago, someone sent me a question talking about Africa, colonial Africa to begin with, right? And what was going on in colonial Africa. And we were talking about the partitions. And the question was, why did people start partitioning Africa? Well, it's obvious, right? Africa had a lot of resources. And coming out of, coming into the 1800s, it was easier for Europeans to get over there. And so they came over. Trevor Noah does a really great thing on this in his stand up, and they basically rolled over and said, "This is this area. This is our area." And rather you look at the European countries that did it, they all split it up and said what they wanted. Horrible things happened, like what Belgium did in Africa. But the Belgium, you look at what happened with Belgium, with France, with Germany, Portugal, with Spain, with England, and they went over and they partitioned off this land. So the question that the person had was, how did they get away with that? Well, they got away with it because they agreed with each other. They got away with it because they agreed with each other. And the African did fight. The African did fight. Let us not go into the idea that the African just allowed these things to happen, because that was another misnomer people put out. They fought, but when you have European powers who are still there to this day, laying claim to these African nations, right? They also supplied each other's with weapons. They supplied each other's with resources, and they supplied each other so that they could maintain the European hold on Africa. And that went on all the way from the 1870s to World War I, to World War II, and we started to see it break up. Because that was power and keeping African people and their resources under tow. And the term for that is partition. They partitioned these countries. They did the same thing post World War II. If you go look at what happened in Germany, there's another partition. And that went on for a very, very long time. And they exploited the land. You say territories. Yes. Agreements. Territories. Right? And it comes down to this whole thing. I remember a little while ago I was talking about Cecil Rhodes. And I was talking about Cecil Rhodes because when Dylan and Ruth went and shot up Mother Emanuel Church, he was talking about Rhodesia, South Africa, and reclaiming Rhodesia. Think about that. They feel that they own South Africa and that it should be returned to them, as if in the 1800s this land wasn't taken from the Africans. And there was conflict. There was conflict even into the 40s with Queen Elizabeth's father. And why you had the issues going on in South Africa. Because they didn't believe in slavery. The Boers, right? The Dutch settlers in South Africa, they wanted to keep people in slavery. The British didn't want to do that. But that mentality stayed there. That mentality stayed there. And it came down to power. And that's why they had a war. That's why they had a war. But I wanted to answer that person's question because, you know, I don't remember where we were going earlier. And I hope that I want you guys go look that up. Go read about the Boer Wars. You see them sometimes shown in movies. I think, what was that movie? The movie's about the guys with the tailor shop. They're secret agents in the tailor shop. The last movie that they did, the guy was going down to Africa during the Second Boer War. But we don't talk about why that is and what's going on with that. So I think you really should go and check that history out and learn some things from that. Man, somebody asked a question because I don't know where we were going with this. No questions. Silence. Okay, let me ask you all a question. Who was King Leopold II? Since we're talking about the Boer War and South Africa and Africa, who was King Leopold II of Belgium? And what's his significance? Somebody. That's a question for you since we're in that era of history. And also, I think it came up at my house at some point in time earlier today. We're talking about Leopold. Anybody? Well, Leopold was definitely, the butcher of the Congo. Yes. Yes. Leopold II was a horrible, horrible person. We talk about the genocide of the Jews, but we rarely talk about Leopold II and the horrendous things he did in the Congo, what was known as the Congo Free State, which is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But it's estimated that Leopold may have killed at least 15 to 20 million Congolese people. Where the atrocities and the cuttings and the labor and the torture, mutilations, burnings, and no one really talks about it. Even when you look at history courses, they gloss over Leopold. And it is amazing because I think sometimes too, historians, they don't want to. Historians got a lot from the Congo. Let's put that part into it too. They don't want to call it a genocide because they want to make it seem like, well, we were involved. It was civilized people. We're not talking about ancient times. We're talking about late 1800s to early 1900s, right? But he was a butcher. He was a horrible person. And we spent a lot of time talking about Hitler as a name that everybody can associate and know immediately. But a lot of people don't really understand who Leopold II of Belgium was and how his policies, his desires, his cruelty, his brutality played on Africa. Good on you, Tony. Thank you for that quick answer. Oh, I was about to say he was the king of the Belgians. I didn't know he was. He was both. Shout out to me. He was a butcher and that. Have I seen the new Napoleon movie? No, I have not watched Napoleon. I don't know why. Just haven't gotten around to it. Man, let me tell y'all something. This session was pretty good, man. I love all of you all. Thank you for asking these questions and putting these things out here. I sometimes I get lost in my own in my own thoughts, what things I want to cover. And I do have a list, and sometimes I have all these episodes that I specifically want to talk about. But I could do that at any time. I really like this program to be interactive. I don't want you to think that that's a cop out. I really like it to be interactive. I want you to ask questions. I want you to delve into topics, and I want us to do it together so that we can learn together and everybody can bring their thoughts and their understanding to it. Because when we do that, right, we all learn together. And that's one of the things I've always said that I wanted done with Erudition. I want us to learn together. It's important that we do that so that no one feels left out. Everybody has an interaction. Everybody has something that they can add to the conversation. So I appreciate you all tonight talking about all of these things and getting into all of these topics. Oh, I should have responded to that question with the word no, and there's nothing we can do. Oh, my kids. I don't, I've been very, very. Let me say this. My sister, Crystal, got married last weekend. I wasn't able to be there, and it really bothered me. And that was one of the reasons why I told you I was earlier in the program. I was down. I really don't like not being able to be involved in family things, and it can really bother me. Being a person who spent his adult life in the military, it really, really can get to me. I don't have a strong integumentum to protect myself against that. Sometimes it bothers me, but I wanted to say on this episode, in case she watches, I am so happy and proud of her. That's my baby sister, and I wish them nothing but success in their marriage, in their new marriage. So I'll see them when I get a chance to see them. She'll probably Skype me anyway, but Skype or FaceTime me. But I wanted to say that before I got off of here. You guys have your fun with your debate tonight. I don't know if I'm gonna be watching that, as I said, but I definitely understand those who want to and what you're going to get from it. Let me tell you another thing that you can go get, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Go get the Ballad of the Bullet. Read that speech from Malcolm X. It's not a very long speech. Get that speech. Read it. Read it before the debate. Get an understanding of what's going on. Let's see if I can add a link to that. And I guarantee you, once you read that Malcolm's speech from 1964, you're going to be like, wow, that was 1964. And look at where we are right now. I'll put that link in here for you. Here's a link to that speech. As always, I want you guys to learn something. You say I'm not watching it either. I'm done with a lot of foolery. I'm done with when we have a society right now where I'm still worried with the amount of Black children who will make it through the summer. That is not Democrat or Republican. That is everybody. And I'm trying to understand why we can't make stronger laws regardless, right? And don't tell me, it's funny, when one party is in, you say, well, they got the power to do it, we have to wait. Then when another party is in, and then you say, well, the other party is fighting us, so we can't do anything. It's foolery. While at the same time, we have innocent people dying, innocent people being hurt, innocent people being arrested, innocent people being manipulated by the system, malfeasance all throughout state and federal legislatures. It's a mess. And people not prioritizing learning to even protect themselves, to even know what's going on. You know, that's why you could have a Black man go run through a community and be shot to death with a shotgun in a community that has had a history of racial segregation, violence, sundown activity. But we don't inform each other enough. And so we fall into the trap. We don't know our history enough, so we fall into the trap. And when we try to do sessions and do things like this, we don't get enough participation for people to learn. And then when we give that information, is that information being shared? So while they get up and talk about who's, whatever federal issues that will be significant for the day, there's still craziness. I'm going to tell you all that probably next week, I'm going to start back. I got a book suggestion for you. I thought I had it over here. I always got a book suggestion. Where is it? There it is. I want you to look for a book, right? It's called The African Experience in Spanish America. All right. It's by Leslie B. Rout Jr. And I want you to go get that book, start reading. We're going to start focusing a little bit more on Latinx history because I started it and I got out of it, and how African American and Latinx history align with each other. Because while we're all arguing about the migrants that they're sending up from Texas and Florida and every place else, and we're forgetting that a lot of those people are cousins, have blood ties with us, because we forget how the triangle slave trade went, right? And we're going to start talking about ways ahead. Because I guarantee you that once you start uniting the African American with their Latinx cousins, you will see people in the political parts of this country, both parties go, whoa, let's stop. And we got to change that. Because once you start to understand your relationship, historical relationship, then you will do better. You will do better because then you will start to understand, wait a minute, the Mexican or the Brazilian, these people who I'm saying they shouldn't be here, Guatemalan, we share ancestry. We can build community together, or we can fight for scraps while other people stare down at you, and we can play crab in a barrel, which is what a lot of us are doing on all sides. It don't have to be that way. So we're going to try to start talking about that and start talking about ways ahead and ways and things that are going on and groups that are out there that are trying to actually build that coalition and let us remember who we are. And we're going to do that because I think it's time and I think it's relevant and it's something that we have to do. So expect that to be coming up. We really need to start talking about this Latinx history. I don't know too many historians who are out here talking about it. And I don't know too many people who are very much in tone with it, read enough on it, or at least have an understanding of it to express it to you of how closely tied the African American is with our Latino and Latinx brothers and sisters. We got to do better at knowing that. So that when we say, oh, yeah, throw them out of here, we got to remember that history. And I'm talking about history that is even up until the last 50 years. We got to do better. There's a reason. There's a reason why they don't want that union and why they have us fighting against each other. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me get out of here. I hope you got something from this episode. We were everywhere this episode, and that's cool. We need to do that sometimes. But I hope that you share it, grow. Remember the episode that I told you all about Tina's episode on Monday. The boys didn't do an episode this week, but please feel free to go in there and go watch that episode. I want you to grow. And I want you to get something from it. I'm trying to open this thing, but it won't. I also want you to go out. I've been told that I don't promote my book enough. That is probably true because it just doesn't cross my mind. But I want you to go out and if you haven't, go get my last book. I'm working on a new one right now. But go get my last book, 101 Black History Question Challenge. Get that book. I guarantee you're going to get something from it. You're going to get something from that book because I put work into it. This screenshot right here will show you this is what the book looks like. When you get on, either look it up on Amazon, go to Lulu Books. We will put a link on some of these things so that you can actually see it. And also, you will notice with this particular shot, I showed you some of the sources. There's nothing in my book that is not sourced. Nothing in my book that will not give you someplace else to grow your own knowledge. And that was done on purpose, right? Rather it be Cushion, the Excellent Empires, how things came about. Every question will grow your knowledge. And so I want you to go in there and I want you to grow. This thing says 2 to 6, but I believe I didn't put anything less than 3 sources in for each question. But all right, go get that. Go get that. I also put it at a reasonable price. It's not going to cost you a lot to get this knowledge, right? I could have made this book $50 and whatever. There are school books and African American history books that don't have the information that I put in this book. So please go and get it and grow your knowledge. I guarantee you. And then come give me a review, people. I don't care if it's on Facebook. I don't care if it's on YouTube. Say, Eddie, this book was horrible. Or this book was great. Or I didn't understand what you said here. But whatever it may be, give us a shout out. Let us know what's going on. You can do that on Erudition Network on Facebook. You can do that on the Erudition Interactive Black History Sessions group that is on Facebook. You can join that. And you can also drop it into our on YouTube, right? Or friend me on Facebook, which people seem to do, and just send me 40, 50 questions as folks do all the time. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. God bless you. God keep you. And preferably we will see you again next week. But until then, I ask that God keep you and your family and you be blessed. Thank you.